All right. I think we have sort of a quorum, so we will get started. Hi, everybody. My name is Lily Backer. I will be supporting the funding work stream of the Hydrogen Study Task Force effort. And I think we have a couple other members of my team on the line, so we'll do intros in just a moment. Today, we only have an hour, which I'm thinking will fly by. First, I would love to hear who's on the line, and also so that we have that for public record. Then we'll just review really quickly what the goals of this working group will be. And then we've set aside some time to go over the different federal funding opportunities that have being talked about left and right, and the different participation requirements. Then we have Binu joining us, who will provide an overview of the Targeted Brownfield Development Program in Connecticut, and we'll discuss a little bit more about the research plan and how we're going to approach this working group. And so I certainly welcome others to chime in at any point. We will have, my team is here helping me monitor the chat, and then I will also, I welcome anybody's hands raised via Teams. Jen, if you could just let me know, because I'm on browser version, if I missed any hands. And we also welcome any commentary throughout, because this is meant to be collaborative. All right, and then just a brief overview. You might be wondering who I am and why I'm here, and why I'm calling in from California at that. So Stratogen is serving as a consultant to this effort through the Connecticut Green Bank. We are handling logistics like meeting minutes and recordings and everything you have to file with the Secretary of State. So apologies in advance for all the emails that I will and have sent you. We will also be coordinating with the co-chairs of this working group and developing agendas that will be provided to participants before the working groups. We will also be providing technical assistance, so research where helpful, and we'll be hosting these meetings on a monthly cadence. So as a reminder, this is the meeting schedule. It should be on everybody's calendars. So please let me know if for whatever reason you are not on the calendar invites. We'd love to get you added in. But before we kick off, I would love to hear from everybody who's on the line. So I'm actually just going to click the People tab and run down the line in a quick roll call fashion. I'd love to hear from you, your name, your title, your organization, and if you have any specific interests that you're hoping to discuss in this working group, or just what drew you specifically to funding. I'd love to hear about that too. We're a small group, so happy to dive into.
Did Lily freeze for anyone else?
I think Lily froze, but we can probably just start going down the intro list.
Oh no, I'm sorry, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. Will you let me know if I freeze again?
Will do.
Yes.
Okay. Hope it was a flattering freeze frame. I was just gonna say I'd like to go down the list, and if folks can share their name, their title, their organization, and then if you want to share a little bit more detail about what drew you to the funding working group and your specific interest in this topic, please feel free to share a couple sentences. We'd love to hear from you. So first on my list is Alex Judd.
Oh, hey, Lily. It's Alex. So I'm from Dave Pitney. We're a law firm. I'm out of the Hartford office here with my colleague, Taylor Mata, who can introduce herself when we get there on the list. But we're providing the Green Bank support through this process. So we're here to listen and observe. And you had mentioned research that Stratogen's helping with. We're here to provide that assistance to where that makes sense and be part of the conversation. Really looking forward to the call today. And that's all for me.
Excellent. Thank you. Brian Farnan.
That pesky mute button. Hi, I'm Brian Farnan. I'm the General Counsel and Chief Legal Officer for the Green Bank. You know, Alex and Dave Pitney and my role is really one of support. So we want to, whether it's policy, funding options, you know, we want to throw out as many ideas as possible for your consideration, because at the end of the day, we want your committee to be able to bring things to the task force. And then at the same time, you know, that task force is then going to bring some of these policy ideas to the ENT. So we're here to support you in any way we can.
Excellent, thank you. Brian Garcia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Brian Garcia, President and CEO of the Connecticut Green Bank. Just excited by the idea of how to use limited public dollars to mobilize massive amounts of private investment in clean energy. So specifically that angle of funding that is around private capital mobilization. This isn't all about government trying to solve the problem. It's about markets.
Very interesting. Thank you. Binu Chandi.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm here to present the Brownfield funding program to all of you. This is on behalf of Deputy Commissioner Dom, who's here. And I'm not sure if it's relevant, but I am the commissioner's designee on the Connecticut Green Bank.
Wonderful. Thank you for participating and for your preparation. Commissioner Dom.
Hi, everyone. Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Economic and Community Development here in Connecticut. We are involved in building many industries, but clean industries, renewable tech is something that we have a big focus on right now, and looking forward to hearing all the recommendations and thoughts that come out of this task force. We just lost our agenda, but I think that's probably okay.
That is okay. My colleague's going to take over screen share, so I don't turn into a robot again.
Just didn't know if that was on purpose. And so yes, and then one of the many programs we have is the Brownfields Remediation Loan and Grant Program, which Banu runs and is going to tell us about today. But we're also the agency is just also really interested in hydrogen at a high level and all the potential that it represents for the Connecticut economy.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. And thank you for serving as a co-chair. Next on our list, I have Erin Childs.
Hello, Lily. Good afternoon, everyone. Erin Childs, Director with Strategy and Consulting. You've probably seen me at some task force meetings if you've been able to make those, but our team is helping to coordinate and facilitate some of these overall task force meetings and work group meetings. But yeah, really excited to start digging in today on some of the specific incentives that we already know are available, and really hoping that this can sort of help us with moving towards a bit of a gap assessment and starting to think about what comes next.
Perfect. Thank you. I have Evan DeSantos next. Evan, are you on the line? We can always come back to you too if mute is being difficult. Barbara Fernandez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Barbara Fernandez, the University of Connecticut. My interest in this group is really on the different funding models that may be in place in the United States. My background is really in funding technology and manufacturing through the different TRL levels. In manufacturing, obviously, as it takes on new technology, different funding comes into place, whether it's starts at TRL 1 or all the way to 10. And going in with what Brian said is that as the technology matures, there will be less public funding and more private funding, and how that can come into play. I don't know if that is a model that exists in hydrogen, but I'll be interested in knowing more.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. Let's see, we have Jen Gorman, and then Kaya, you're up next.
Yeah, great to meet everyone. I'm Jennifer Gorman. I'm an analyst on the strategy team, so I'll be helping project execution on our end.
Thank you. And
Hi, my
Kaya.
name's Hi, my name is Kaya, also analyst on the strategy team. Really happy to be here and hope to coordinate the meetings.
Perfect, thank you. Next we have Lydia Rupert.
Hi, everybody. Lydia from Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. I'm a research analyst with the Office of Supply, and I have been supporting all the policy side efforts related to hydrogen, and funding is a big part of it. And it's a very exciting moment, especially from this dimension. And I'm very happy to be here with you all.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Next, we have Samantha.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm Sam Janowski, she, her. I am the state director of the Sierra Club's Connecticut chapter, and we are focused on addressing climate change with just and equitable solutions. In particular, actions we can take in Connecticut to meet our own state's greenhouse gas reduction targets. Happy to be here and apologize in advance. I may need to leave a few minutes early.
No problem. Thank you for the heads up. Shannon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Lawn. I am an attorney and the Connecticut State Director for Conservation Law Foundation. Like Sam, we're really working to align the state's energy policies with its climate goals. Specifically with respect to funding, I'm interested in kind of unpacking what federal funding is available for clean hydrogen deployment and where there may be gaps where state funding may be needed in the short term.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Then we have Taylor Amato.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Taylor Amato, an associate at Day Pitney with Alex, who has largely already covered our role, but mostly just here to listen, support, and based on everyone else's introductions, it sounds like I'll be doing a fair bit of learning as well. So I'm excited.
Awesome. And then finally, last but not least, and then we might circle back to see if Evan was able to unmute, we have Becca.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Becca Treach, also with Connecticut Deep. I'm a senior policy advisor primarily focused on the comprehensive energy strategy, which of course hydrogen plugs into. So excited to work with you all.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you for serving as a co-chair. Let's see, I think we maybe missed Eric and Evan at the beginning. So if either of you want to chime in with a quick intro, more than welcome.
I don't mind going. Eric Ennis, also in the Office of Supply at Deep. So looking forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. We will get started then. And I think I still screen share back. So let me know if I freeze. You should be seeing the overview of working group objectives. So please holler if anything seems off. But just for a quick review, is there anybody who has not been participating or hasn't yet participated in the task force meetings or any other convenings of this effort? Just a quick, totally okay if so. Just wondering if anyone's super new to the effort. Okay, so we probably don't need to go into too much detail about how this plugs in, but this is one of 5 working groups that is a part of the larger hydrogen task force effort that is going to submit a really great report in January to the General Assembly. So the objective of this specific working group is to review the existing funding mechanisms and incentives such as the IIJA, although there are some exciting new kids on the block that are worth talking about, and then determine how Connecticut can be best positioned to participate in these programs and be competitive to participate. Separately, we will also be looking at additional funding sources at a state level with a particular focus on the targeted Brownfield development loan program. So our statutory responsibilities are sort of similar to the objective. We are going to look at how we can look at the different opportunities to be competitive for the IIJA, look at the Brownfield program, and then we're also going to see what else is out there beyond. So it's pretty exciting and has lots of opportunity for interpretation. So to get started, we thought in this session, it might be good to set the stage and talk about the federal funding opportunities generally. So does anyone have any questions about, before we get started, about the role of this group? We'll talk a little bit more later about what we have planned for this working group and the different sessions, which is super open to feedback. But does anyone have questions before we launch in? Or any comments from my team? All right. So to set the stage, I just wanted to provide a brief overview of some of the federal funding opportunities for green hydrogen and how the state may position itself to receive funding. And just for a bit of context, I've been working with different hub visioning and developing efforts across the US, specifically this one in the Southeast and one in California. So as many of you may know, we've had some very exciting recent federal legislation that's created a real tipping point for action. First, we had the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is a mouthful, and we will be calling the IIJA, which is also a mouthful. And most famously, I would say, there's that $8 billion dedicated for regional clean hydrogen hubs, and tons of exciting opportunity or activity there in the past week. So we'll go into more detail on that later. But the Inflation Reduction Act has also been a very exciting advancement. Interestingly, the term mentioned most frequently in the energy section is hydrogen. There's both a production tax credit, which generates credit for each kilogram of hydrogen produced for the first 10 years of a project's lifetime, and an investment tax credit, which allows to immediately offset some of the upfront costs of hydrogen infrastructure investments. All of the credits are actually on an escalator, so you get more for lower carbon intensity. And the maximum amount really hinges on meeting prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. And there's specific add-ons as well based on things like sourcing products like steel from within the United States, where your project is located. So if it's in an area that's historically employed lots of folks through oil and gas, et cetera. So there's a couple different things that can impact the kinds of benefits that you get in terms of tax credits. So definitely something to start noodling on. What can we do to make sure that the state's really positioned to meet prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements? Are there specific locations that would make sense for these types of projects and investments, just to get started thinking about things? It's important to note that together, these sources of funding are significant. So I think it's important to note that the IRA does allow for some incentives without this competitive solicitation, and so it allows us to free up the industry to utilize some cost drivers that are specific to the individual project needs. So definitely would be an area worth digging in on throughout this work stream. But today I do want to focus a little bit more on the IIJA, which is written into the is legislatively mandated. So we'll certainly have a bit of a focus there. It's important to note that the clean hydrogen hubs is not the entire puzzle. It's definitely a big chunk of it. But there's also some pretty exciting provisions for R&D and manufacturing, which we know is super critical right now because supply chain issues are a major hindrance to advancement. And I know we have an awesome fuel cell industry and other industries like that in Connecticut. So worth being something that we consider throughout this working group. importantly, the DOE Hubs application was actually launched last week at the Clean Energy Ministerial Conference in Pittsburgh. I'll fast forward a little bit. So just for those who may not have heard the news yet, they opened applications for $7 billion. We'll see what happens with the final billion. And step one is a concept paper stage. So many folks are scrambling for that part of the process right now as we speak. But something else that happened last week is a draft was released of the National Hydrogen Strategy and Roadmap. So just a quick update there. And so I would like to just chat a little bit more about that regional hubs component, since I know that's a super hot topic. It will designate between 6 to 10 hubs. That was, I believe, what was announced last week, that it's going to be a larger number of hubs. 6 to 10 hubs that will demonstrate a vision for the entire green hydrogen ecosystem. So they want to see focus on production, transport, storage, and end use. It also should be supporting the DOE's overarching goals. So they released a draft clean hydrogen production standard of a well-to-gate carbon intensity of 4 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen. So it would need to truly be a clean hydrogen hub. It also should flange up into the larger vision. So ultimately, the DOE has a vision for a national clean hydrogen network and strategy. So it should contribute towards that. But to the extent that it's practical, we also know that it's likely that they'll be differentiated in terms of diversity of feedstocks. So there may be a blue hub, a green hub, a nuclear one. We also know that it's preferred that they are diverse in terms of end use. So one hub might be really centered around a major shipping port, and another might be focused around a major manufacturing or industrial region of the country. Ideally, maybe even both, we'll see. We also are likely to see diversity in terms of regional location, so spread out throughout the country. And I just want to note that it's really important that we are all on the same page, that our task today and throughout this is not to come up with a federal funding application. The state of Connecticut is working with a really fabulous coalition of states to take care of that. And we would love to hear updates along the process. But our job is to identify recommendations for the state legislature that will help Connecticut be as competitive as possible for all different kinds of federal funding, and also how we can incentivize, as Brian was saying, investment from private sector and leverage state funding opportunities. One area I just specifically want to focus in on is the Justice 40. So Justice 40 executive order requires that 40% of overall benefits of federal investments flows to disadvantaged communities. So this varies from different priorities like job creation to decreasing pollution and creating health benefits. And the DOE has announced that I think about 150 different programs will be supporting the Justice 40 executive order. And it's important to note that this applies to both formula funding, so non-competitive awards that are based on a predetermined formula, like state block grants, and competitive funding, so awards to funding applicants that are based on the strength of submitted proposals and other criteria. But at this time, it is not required for a project within the IRA to meet Justice 40 requirements. And please, somebody correct me if I don't have the most recent information. I believe that to be true. But I know things change quite quickly, and there's been many pages of published materials in the past week. Oops. All right, and just moving forward, I know I mentioned that almost 150 DOE programs will be supporting Justice 40, falling under a variety of different investment categories, some of which are listed here. I think it's important to note, so as I mentioned, the funding opportunity announcement for the hubs, $7 billion, came out last week, and I believe it said that 20% of the application, the ultimate application due this spring, will be weighted on a community benefits plan. So some examples of activities that may be included in the community benefits plan or items that may be included, the ability to demonstrate specific and measurable benefits, the ability or a plan to really engage stakeholders, measurability of all of these activities and such as job creation, being actually supported by different groups such as environmental justice groups, tribal nations, as well as labor unions and labor communities. So we know that this is going to be incredibly important, not only to create a durable, inclusive, and just transition within any hub, but also in order to be a part of the federal movement. And just a quick note about how disadvantaged communities that qualify under Justice 40 are defined. I believe I don't want to mess this up, so I will read it directly. Must rank in the 80th percentile of the cumulative sum of 36 burden indicators and have at least 30% of households classified as low income. And it's important to note that the tribes that are listed are federally recognized tribes. I know there are more beyond that. And just zooming in a little bit on Connecticut, just important to note, where we are and what a focus area might be. You can see there's not a lot of federally recognized tribal activity or tribal land right now within Connecticut that would probably qualify for this, but there is some areas that are showing up in green. So just in terms of a bit of context for potential focus areas. And so a couple key takeaways is that in order to be competitive for IIJA funding, a mouthful as I said, Connecticut should certainly identify opportunities to create benefit for environmental justice and disadvantaged communities. We should determine opportunities for state level match funding. Something I forgot to mention is that the hubs does have a match requirement. So anything we can do to leverage other dollars that could be matched against federal dollars would be super productive. And we also should identify what Connecticut's unique strengths are and seek to further enable those. So those were a few takeaways I had, but a couple discussion questions I had for everyone here is, are these the appropriate key takeaways given your understanding of these opportunities? Do you have any idea of, at this point, what the most relevant comparative advantages would be for Connecticut? And specifically, if you have any ideas within the value chain or hydrogen ecosystem as a whole, I certainly welcome those thoughts. And happy to, if folks want to share in the chat, or if they would like to, if you just want to unmute, happy to hear your thoughts. Also happy to have everybody noodle on it and share after the fact. Oh, I'm seeing a hand from Brian.
So I'll just riff here just off the top and just kind of play this. So the second one, most relevant comparative advantages in Connecticut to help position us. I think, so we have a community that has been selected for Communities Leap. That is Bridgeport, and Communities Leap is the local energy action plan program of the Department of Energy. It's the seminal Justice 40 program. So learning from what is happening in that best practice community, Bridgeport is dealing with efficiency and renewable energy, not hydrogen and fuel cells per se, but how they're going about the engagement of people in the community and working towards a community benefit agreement is, I think, a comparative advantage that we can lean on to learn and apply to the map that you're showing there, Lily, of Connecticut Justice 40 areas. That's one. And then kind of following along that lines, a policy that should be captured in this vein, and I'm forgetting the number, maybe Eric Annis would know the number, is the I want to say it's 2199 or 2099, but is the public policy that passed that requires community benefit agreements to be done for renewable energy projects that are greater than 2 megawatts in Connecticut. So if we're talking about a fuel cell project, in that context, then it would require community benefit agreements to be done. So yeah, those are two thoughts that come to mind. I'll keep weighing in as we go through these, but those two things come to mind. I'll chat through that bill number if I could find it.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. That's a really helpful starting point. And I know we'll be hearing from Bridgeport at our next task force meeting as well, or one of the upcoming ones. Erin, you could clarify on that if I'm wrong. Shannon, thank you for this note. I would love to think about what could be within the scope of this working group to think about this. What you noted, that many EJ advocates and allies are concerned that Justice 40 does not include race as a criterion for disadvantaged communities. It's troubling because it's one of the best predictors of disproportional environmental burdens. So thank you for that note. I just wanted to share it so that it was captured in the recording. Any other thoughts? I just want to make sure I saw every hand. All right, so just wanted to provide a bit of background about sort of the different programs, at least at federal level, that we might start out by looking at. Doesn't mean it's necessarily limited, and we welcome additional input. But
Hey,
next up, oh yeah.
Lily, the one that I didn't see on the list, and I'm sure it's on there, given that we're in the fuel cell state, are all the fuel incentive. I'm not sure where they sit on the ITC spectrum, but I'm pretty sure they're alongside wind and solar with the 30% ITC. So we would want to flag, if that is the case, a 30% investment tax credit is a big deal. And I think the adders may apply to that 30% as well. So you're talking about siting on Brownfield, starting a low income, siting in, they're all very relevant to increasing federal investment in fuel cell projects in Connecticut. So just flag to do more research on where fuel cell sits in that tax credit.
Thank you. And I definitely don't want to tell you anything incorrect off the top of my head. So I will come back to that where it sits in the Inflation Reduction Act, but that's a super helpful call out. All right, let's see. Oh, thank you, Brian. If there are no other comments, we will move along to the next portion of our agenda, which is an overview of DECD's Brownfield programs. Thank you so much for participating and prepping for this meeting. I want to welcome up Binu.
Thanks, Lily, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about our program. I lead the Office of Brownfield Remediation Development. So this office was created as a one-point resource for the state for all things brownfield, for brownfield remediation and development. So we work very closely with Connecticut DEEP, with their Brownfield group and their remediation group to facilitate and streamline brownfield redevelopment. We also work with other agencies, but DEEP is more, we work more because brownfields and remediation is a more DEEP-like subject. I was asked to talk about the brownfield grants and loan and the whole brownfield program. And then I did a little bit of research and saw that the Public Act 22-8 is specifically talking about recommendations for funding and tax preferences for building hydrogen-fueled energy facilities at brownfield sites through the Targeted Brownfield Development Loan Program. But I thought, having a knowledge of the whole toolbox are, different tools that we could use for this opportunity is useful. So the first thing is we have the grant program. And I'm going to talk about the loan program, and I'm going to cover a little bit about the liability relief program and the Brownfield Land Bank program. And Lily, you can advance the slide. So for the funding, the funding is authorized by the legislature and the governor's biennium budget. And the program has received an average of 50 million over the last few years in each biennium budget. So for fiscal year 21 and 22, we received 50 million, and we requested the same for fiscal year 23 and 24. And these monies are available to us when the Bond Commission approves the funds. So this pot or this fund of 50 million for each 2 years funds both the grant and the loan program. So the grant program is the eligible entities that can apply for the grant program are municipalities, municipal entities, and land banks. And we have a competitive process, periodic funding, and we are statutorily required to conduct 2 rounds in a year. And the scoring criteria is, projects that are shovel ready, that have good merits, economic development, projected tax revenues, the economic and the community conditions of the area. Like we encourage projects in distressed municipalities, opportunity zones, projects that are consistent with local state plans, the DCD policies. And we're also looking very closely at public-private partnerships. And this is important to know because even though Public Act 22-8 only talks about the targeted brownfield development loan program, if somebody is interested in our grant program, they can easily, when I say somebody, I mean a developer, can easily partner with a municipality or municipal-like entity who can take our grant program and come through and accept our grant. So, when a developer partners with a municipal entity, the grant can pass through as a grant or loan to the developer. And so it's important to know that this grant program is also a viable option for a hydrogen facility development. And we also look at what is the leverage. I think Brian mentioned, how much of this small public subsidy can bring in terms of private investment. We also look at applicant team's experience. And even though the statute limits grants up to 4 million, in the recent competitive rounds, we've advertised only up to 2 million for remediation grants. Then we also have an assessment-only grant program, which I don't think is that important, but I just like to mention that we give out assessment-only grants and up to $200,000. Then moving on to next slide. So this is the details about the targeted brownfield development loan program. So the eligible applicants in this case are potential brownfield purchasers and current owners. And these two, entities should have no direct or related liability for the conditions of the brownfield. And they have to be seeking to develop the brownfields to reduce blight or for a development such as a hydrogen facility, perhaps. So there is no statutory requirement to have a periodic funding process, but recently we've moved the loan program to a periodic funding announcement, just like the grant program. And so we are allowed to give out loans of up to $4 million. In the recent rounds, we are requiring a minimum 10% developer equity. And these loans are low interest loans. The rate is 3%. We're allowing a flexible deferred repayment to match the projected cash flow. The term of the loan can match the project capital stack and the projected cash flow, but the statutes allows for a maximum up to 30 years. The loan can be amortized over the larger portion of the payment period, or maybe I should say should be amortized. And we have a new requirement that the loan has to be fully repaid on permanent refinancing. Those who are familiar with this loan program in previous years, we were offering loan forgiveness, but we are not offering that anymore. Instead, we are encouraging public-private partnership with the grant program. So because people were expecting 100% forgiveness, which is essentially a grant. So instead of offering a forgivable loan program, we are instead encouraging people to partner with grant entities and receive grants instead. And we're also having a minimum debt service coverage ratio of 1.15. So the award criteria is very similar to a grant program for this loan program. We look at how much the private leverage is and what the rate of investment is for the loan program. Next slide, please. So there are some threshold requirements if you want to accept either a grant or loan. The site has to be a brownfield, and this has the brownfield definition as per statutes. The section 32-760 is any abandoned or underutilized site where redevelopment, reuse, expansion has not occurred due to the presence or potential presence of pollution in the buildings, soil or groundwater that requires investigation and remediation before or in conjunction with the redevelopment, reuse, or expansion of the property. So basically, a contaminated property cannot be just termed as a brownfield. There has to be that redevelopment component. And for this particular goal that you're seeking for using this program to fund a potential hydrogen facility, I think it will apply as long as the site is vacant, abandoned, or underutilized. And the other thing to note about the definition of brownfields in Connecticut is it's not limited to soil and groundwater remediation. It also covers hazardous building material. Then the other threshold requirement is that the applicant and potential development partners should not have any direct or related liability for the conditions of the brownfield. And the other threshold requirement is someone in the team should be the property owner, or they should show some proof of access or some kind of site control or path to site control. And this is common across all DCD programs. We make sure that the potential development partner is registered to do business in the state of Connecticut, is in good standing, there's no pending lawsuits, liens filed, and tax arrears. Next slide, please. I think you can skip that. I covered that already. So just to give you an idea of what are the eligible uses of funding, both under the grant and the loan program, it's basically costs associated with the investigation and redevelopment of a brownfield, or investigation, and I think I should correct that, it's the remediation of a brownfield. So it's basically soil, groundwater, infrastructure, investigation, assessment, remediation, lead and asbestos abatement, demolition, hazardous materials or waste disposal, long-term groundwater and natural attenuation, institutional controls, attorney fees, that is for environmental consulting, planning, engineering, and environmental consulting, building and structural issues related to the brownfield property, and environmental insurance. Next slide, please. So before going there, I saw there was a question, Lily. I'm not sure if the question was for me, but I did see in some of the documents you sent early in the morning, there was a question, how and in what regions can the targeted brownfield development loan program be utilized to support clean hydrogen development? So the answer is we don't have any geographical restriction. Any municipality can apply for both our programs. And since this is a competitive program, projects that appear to be more realistic and shovel ready are bound to be successful. And it's because the loan program is there to help a potential developer for brownfield. Loan programs are sort of automatically, we like those projects because the key to a good project is having a developer in place. So when somebody comes knocking on DECD's door, and if they're viable and capable to do the redevelopment project, they're usually successful. And then I think there was another part to your question. What are the financial benefits? The financial benefits is, the brownfield redevelopment, the delta in financing is cleaning up the property. So here at DCD, with this program, we are trying to help developers, satisfy that delta to remediate or clean up the property. And that's where the value comes in. I don't know if that was the intent of the question. And then, so Lily, I just want to ask, were the questions meant for me or for everybody?
Yeah, so those were part of, I believe, the charter, the guiding research questions.
Okay.
So that's a really helpful context, absolutely, for the charter in terms of guiding, how, and I think also we wrote the charter before we had a deeper understanding of this through your presentation. So we may even refine further how the depth of our research questions given this presentation and learnings.
Okay.
It's really
so helpful. I want to quickly touch on it. Do I have some time, or we can cover that another time?
Yeah, you may have a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk about our liability relief programs. Along with the funding options, this is a very good tool as well. Basically, this gives protection to a developer from having to clean up beyond the property, the brownfield property. So many developers come and get those liability relief approvals from us. It gives state and third-party liability relief, exemption from the Property Transfer Act. That is going to be sunset, but still useful. And most very key is that they're not responsible for offsite contamination. And just so that everybody knows, the next slide, please. We also have the land bank program. We've approved 3 brownfield land banks, and the land banks have the ability to acquire, manage, clean up, and reposition or sell brownfield sites on behalf of municipalities. So it's kind of like a staging entity where that entity takes all the protections of liabilities to clean up a brownfield, and then when the site is ready, they can hand it over to a municipality or a potential developer. And if anyone has questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you for that excellent overview. I'm excited to rewatch it too on the recording to make sure I captured everything. Brian, was that a new hand or old hand?
A new hand, just a comment. Yeah. Banu, that was fantastic. I feel like in the special act, we have 7 questions. I feel like Banu just answered one of them. So we just need to summarize not only the brownfield, the targeted brownfield development loan program, but all the other pieces that Banu has talked about in the findings to the Energy and Technology Committee. That was just so substantive and comprehensive that I feel like it sets the baseline for where we are. The question for folks should be, are there things that can be added or augmented or whatever? Those are what people should be thinking about. But that was, in my opinion, that was fantastic. Everyone should know about it. I was trying to Google, a former brownfield in Bridgeport that probably received some DECD support that ultimately led to the largest fuel cell project almost in the world at the time. So, they do work together,
Yeah.
these programs.
I think it is adjacent to 60 Main Street, that particular property.
That's right. So there's a part of me that would be like, to the Strategy team, let's work with Banu and Alexandra on summarizing all of this. That's a finding. Maybe we can give a few case studies to give relevance to this issue.
Right.
Fuel cell would be a
That's
good
what I'm
one.
talking about.
And then the other question I had is, like, in the context of all these federal adders of funding for brownfields, is there like you gave a great definition in the statutory and the criteria. Is there a map that can be provided as a part of the information in to the ENT? That was the only question I had.
Yeah, we don't have a ready map, but I think we could create something. And there is a map on DEEP's website with, they call it the inventory of brownfields, but it's not the brownfields that we funded. Yes, but I think there may be a map. So to your answer. We can, for the final report, I think we can improve on it to include sites that may be available already and that we funded. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we talked with Deputy Commissioner Dom about that a little bit, and it was something that I guess had been developed in the past, but maybe wasn't a super up-to-date resource. And so that may be something worth looking into or seeing how we can create recommendations.
I'm sorry, I hope you can hear me. Let me
Oh,
know.
yeah, I can.
We don't have an exhaustive map. We have, I believe we have, like you said, there's a list of, a partial list of the brownfield sites that are out there, but given the pretty broad definition of a brownfield site, it's impossible to have something exhaustive and comprehensive.
So the problem is there are many brownfield sites, and then the people are reluctant to categorize.
Capture a piece of land.
I'm sorry, I think I'm interrupting, Alexandra.
Oh yeah, I think we had a bit of a connectivity issue.
No, not even. You're not at all. All good.
Yeah.
Keep going. I think I finished, and then there was a delay.
Yeah. So
got it.
Yeah, a map of all the brownfields, like Alexandra said, we were never going to get that map. But then we do have a map that resides on DEEP's website with the sites that people have willingly said, yeah, my site is a brownfield. We have sites that are in some DEEP and EPA programs and sites that we may have funded and know that it's a brownfield. So we do have, and then we have a comprehensive list of all sites that DCD has funded in the past.
Excellent. Thank you. This is so much good stuff to work off of. I do want to make sure we jump ahead to the research plan so that based on this excellent information you've provided, we can make sure it's been comprehensively captured within the research plan. So today we aimed to understand the opportunities that are out there and what it takes to be eligible for this funding. Next month, our plan was to really learn how others are preparing for these funding opportunities and incentivizing hydrogen. We also want to dig a bit deeper on any Connecticut specific opportunities, specifically ones that are emerging from other work streams. So we would like to share a hypothesis of areas where Connecticut might be really strong and competitive, and share how others are approaching hydrogen and deployment in other states. Then in November, we were thinking we would really narrow down a bit more into priority areas using the information coming out of the end uses and infrastructure work streams and really all the other groups' findings. And part of the approach to the Brownfield loan program or the Brownfield programs would be that potentially taking whatever mapping resources are available and also kind of overlaying that with high priority infrastructure areas to see where we may be able to create opportunity there. And finally, in December, we would be sharing proposed recommendations and making sure that everybody had the opportunity to provide feedback before the report in January. So this is sort of just an overview of the flow of the different meetings, the working groups that we'll be undertaking over the next couple months. Super open to feedback. It's a starting point to the strategy. Would love anybody's thoughts on if it's missing anything. And I will be supplying these materials. So if you have thoughts after the fact, I also welcome them. And another thing that I really wanted to touch on before we break for today is who might be missing from this working group. Who's somebody who really needs to be on this call and providing input that isn't today. They might be on the list and just not able to come today. But if you have recommendations for participants, we would love that and we'd welcome your introductions or even just a name and email. Any thoughts on the working plan as of right now?
Just a thought. I'm just thinking of the spectrum of funding and financing. So
right.
I think the general use of the term funding a lot connotes grants, that the funding goes to peers. The use of the term financing connotes that it has to be paid back. So in the context of the loan program that Banu laid out, you know, that loan has to be paid back would be different than the funded programs, which are grants. In that context of funding versus financing, in this context of this working group, it feels like there's a spectrum of funding and financing at the early stages of entrepreneurship and new technology development that you talk about, R&D stuff, all the way up to the commercial deployment of existing technology that is commercially available, whether those are electrolyzers, fuel cells, whatever. The commercial financing of those devices. That's what we do, is finance commercial devices that are commercially available, as opposed to the venture capital and what William Smith, I think, on our task force is, what about the upfront venture capital and the new technologies and the entrepreneurs in this cycle? So that's a bit.
Yeah, that's helpful. Just how we can integrate in. So you're saying maybe how we can differentiate the earlier stage funding versus the potentially later stage financing needs. That's helpful. And then was there anything that, I mean, I definitely don't see captured in here much about the IRA and, you know, after Brian, your comment, given the strength of fuel cells and if that, you know, where that could be applicable, we might want to dig in a bit further on areas where fuel cells are applicable, fuel cell, both technology and deployment. So manufacturing and deployment.
Yeah, in the IRA is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund also, which is the kind of green bank modeled 27 billion. One of our capital needs assessments that we did 2 years ago as part of to develop the National Climate Bank, one of the measures was to support fuel cell deployment to make our communities more resilient to the impact. So it would be to identify, you know, an opportunity in every city and town where there's a critical facility to have a fuel cell as a source of backup in the event the grid goes down. So, you know, we would provide loans to those projects. Again, we don't do the funding, we do the financing. So, you we can tag that greenhouse gas reduction fund also as a source of potential funding or financing. Excuse me. Good stuff.
Great. Thank you. I know we are about at time, but I do welcome any further recommendations or comments. This will be posted to the website, so I do welcome your feedback on the research plan, and I hope that you will participate along the way. I think that would be super helpful to have all of your divided expertise coming together. So next time, I think we'll dig in a little bit further on some of these specific areas of strength that you have mentioned, Brian, and for others as well. And then we will also be chatting a little bit more about what has been popping up in other states. We can chat about what we think is a best practice. So I definitely look forward to everybody's input and also your feedback on how we can make these sessions super productive. Thank you, everybody. And then here is my information. If you have any questions, any feedback, comments, anything, I welcome you to reach out. I'd love to chat with you a little bit more. Thanks, everybody. And thank you so much to the DECD team for participating as a presenter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.